Hey everyone, it's Tobes, and welcome to your second monitor. Today is the first video in my series of Commander deck techs for the Hobbit. I'm releasing a new Hobbit Commander deck every Thursday until October when Reality Fracture drops, in addition to my usual Monday Commander deck tech videos. It's Tolkien, so we're gonna have fun with it. As you see, today our commander is the Lord of the Eagles. Better known as the Great Eagle, he made his home with his chieftains at the Great Shelf on the eastern side of the Misty Mountains. After Gandalf the Grey healed him of a poisoned arrow wound, he became a friend to the wizard and an ally to be called upon. During the events of The Hobbit, he and his servants rescued Thorin and company from orcs and wargs by bringing them to the Great Shelf for the night, and after the Eagles were later instrumental in defeating the orcs and wargs during the Battle of Five Armies, the Great Eagle was crowned King of all birds. Leave it to J.R.R. Tolkien to remember that every being has a history worthy of chronicling. I'm excited to show you what I put together for the Lord of the Eagles, but before we get started, let's go over my deck building template. I like to build my decks around my commander. I want to show off why it's such a great card and why I thought it deserved a deck of its own. So I take about 30 cards and put them toward doing whatever my commander asks of me. This is our game plan. It's what we do at the table and how we try to win. 30 more cards go towards supporting that game plan in the form of card advantage, acceleration, and interaction pieces. I usually run 1 or 2 sweepers, sometimes more if it would play into the game plan, sometimes none at all, and I almost always keep to a floor of 38 lands. That way I can always hit my land drops and cast my spells and, play commander. So let's talk about our commander. The Lord of the Eagles is an 8/8 legendary bird noble for 7 and double blue, but it has flash, it has flying, and it says this spell costs X generic mana less to cast, where X is the total power of creatures you control with flying. Like many of the legends from The Hobbit, the Lord of the Eagles is not mechanically complex. It asks us to play flying creatures, particularly those of power, and once we've assembled a convocation of those flyers, he arrives right on time. At that point, he's a big, evasive creature that we'll probably use for attacks more than defense, and that's great. It brings to mind another huge commander with a cost reduction ability, Galta Primal Hunger. I love her too much to debate whether flying or trample is the better evasive ability, so we'll just say that the Lord of the Eagles comes from a proud mechanical tradition. And so, our deck today is a classic, mono blue flyers. We have a bunch of payoff cards, since flyers tend to prefer their own company, giving us extra cards, pumping our attackers, or both. We also have a number of token generators to keep our skies full, many of which reward us for all the cards we're drawing. Did I mention we're a mono blue deck, so we're drawing a crazy number of cards? I gotta say, having so much card advantage in a deck with a combat-focused strategy is a real treat. I understand why this archetype gets skipped over for a lack of perceived complexity, but the fact that it's still crazy fun in spite of that is a testament to just how great a game Magic is. We're taking a lot of cues from our commander. He can swoop in from his perch at flash speed to protect his people by serving as a semi-surprise 8/8 blocker. I mean, it's hard to say it's a surprise when he's in the command zone. But he dissuades our opponents from coming at us in the first place because of that. So, we have a number of other flash threats to follow his example. He wants high-power creatures to maximize his discount ability, so we're running more than a handful of pump effects to buff our entire board. And speaking of that discount effect, it does apply to any commander tax we'll have to pay on him. So even if he's removed, he rarely requires more than 2 blue mana to bring him back into battle. But just in case, we're running way more additional mana discounters than I'd ever normally include in one of my decks. If they're good enough for the Great Eagle, they're good enough for us. This deck is inexpensive and fun, a great pre-con-esque starting point for any of your friends who loves The Hobbit and wants an entree into Commander. It's also a completely reasonable option to break out when you're playing a pot of strangers, walking the line of being effective without being overbearing, as well as being easy to understand without being easy to deal with. It really is an intersection of fair magic and powerful magic, proving you don't have to be one of those tricksy hobbitses to hold your own at the table. All you need is to trust in the nobility of Magic's best mechanic, the elegance of its cleverest color, and the might of its biggest of birds. You'll enjoy this deck if you know that a commander deck doesn't have to be complicated to be threatening or to be fun, or if you like the idea of ruling the roost at your next commander night by converting all your friends to a combat-focused playstyle until they're all birds of a feather. So, as usual, this Moxfield list we're going over today is linked in the video's description. At the bottom of it, you will find a considering section full of cards that I considered including in this deck, but ultimately which didn't make the cut for me. However, if you have a bigger budget, or a smaller one, although today's budget is pretty small, If you like what I've done here and you want to go more heavily into it, or if you're interested in taking this in a little bit of a different direction, that considering section is a great place to begin when you build your own The Lord of the Eagles deck. So we're going to begin in the most obvious possible place. We're going to talk about our flyers. We've got 40 different cards beyond our commander that have flying. Nothing in this section is a token generator that makes flyers, but itself does not fly. We do have other creatures in the deck, and a number of different ways to make token flyers, but I wanted to make it clear that all of these are flying creatures for us, because that's relevant for some of our discount effects, and it's something we can be looking out for later. In any case though, even if the creature that we have in play with flying is not itself a creature card, if it is a token, it still counts toward the discount effect of the Lord of the Eagles. So we're going to start with Cloudfin Raptor, a very simple single blue mana 0/1 bird mutant with flying and with evolve. Evolve means whenever any other creature comes into play, if that creature has a greater power or greater toughness than the Cloudfin Raptor gets a +1/+1 counter. So it starts off as a 0/1 flyer for 1, and basically any other creature we play, it's going to make it bigger. It'll go to a 1/2, and then we get another counter on it if something with power 2 or toughness 3 comes in, and it becomes a 2/4, or a 2/3 rather, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger as we play bigger things. And I know you're thinking, how big can it possibly get? Our commander is an 8/8, so if we can get it walked up all the way to being a 7/8, it can become an 8/9 when our commander comes into play, because our commander will have an 8 power, which is higher than a 7 power. So yeah, it only gets 1 counter per creature that enters, and then only if that creature has greater power or greater toughness than it, but yeah, it can get pretty big, and it's only 1 mana. Similarly, we've got Fairy Seer. Similarly, in the sense that it's only 1 mana. This is 1 blue for a 1/1 Fairy Wizard with flying, and when it enters, we scry 2. So we look at the top 2 cards of our library, we can put them back on the top or put them on the bottom of our library. We can split them between the two, like 1 on top, 1 on bottom. We can even put them both back on top, but in the different order than they were originally. So scrying is very powerful, and this is just a 1 mana 1/1, but it does fly and gives us a little card selection, so that's not bad. Next we have Flitterwing Nuisance. This is a single blue for a 2/2 flying fairy rogue, but it enters with a -1/-1 counter on it, which means it's actually going to be a 1/1 creature when it enters because it's got that counter on it. However, we can pay 2 and a blue and remove a counter from it, which includes that 1/1 counter, or that -1/-1 counter, and whenever a creature we control deals combat damage to a player or planeswalker this turn, we draw a card. So that's a pretty nice way to draw a couple of cards at least, because this is a what we call a coastal piracy effect, and it affects hitting planeswalkers as well. It's just any of our creatures that do combat damage to a player or planeswalker for the rest of that turn is going to draw us a card. This is pretty nice. It's also the case that we can activate this ability at instant speed. So maybe an opponent has, a 1/1 flyer, but they don't want to risk it when we attack with our 2/2 Flitterwing Nuisance. Or rather, if an opponent has a 1/1 flyer and our Flitterwing Nuisance still has its -1/-1 counter on it, we can activate this ability at instant speed after they've blocked. So suddenly, their 1/1 is blocking a 2/2, and all of our other creatures, if they do combat damage to a player or planeswalker, are going to draw us a card until end of turn. So yeah, we can do fun tricks with this, but at the very least, even if we don't even attack with the Nuisance, we can activate its ability, take a counter off of it, and all of our creatures that do combat damage to players or planeswalkers this turn will net us a card. Seems good. Next we have Mockingbird, which is actually an X and a blue for the cost. So X means we can put any number of mana into this that we're able to pay. And when we do, we get a 1/1 Bird Bard, look how nice, with flying, that says we may have this creature enter as a copy of any creature on the battlefield with mana value less than or equal to the amount of mana spent to cast this creature, except that it's a bird in addition to its other types, and it has flying. So this is great. It means that we're able to say, if there's a creature in the battlefield with mana value 4, then we spend 4 mana on this. X equals 3 plus the blue, because it counts the mana that we spent to cast this creature. Not X, but the mana spent, which includes that 1 blue. So if we've got an opponent who's running a Solemn Simulacrum, a 4 mana 2/2 that lets us rampant growth when it enters, we can spend 4 mana on the Mockingbird, and we will have it enter as a Solemn Simulacrum that is also a bird and has flying. So when it has its enters trigger, we'll still get that enters trigger because this enters as it. It doesn't have to wait to get to the battlefield to become that thing. So yeah, this can be whatever's best in play that we're able to afford. We just spend mana, and as long as one of the mana we spend is blue, and we spend an amount of mana equal to that mana cost or the mana value of that creature, we get the best thing in play, but it's also a flying bird. Great. Now, notably though, if we have it enter as a copy of something that is legendary, we want it to enter as a copy of something legendary that an opponent controls, not something that we control, because this does not change the name of that card. It means the Mockingbird will come in as a copy of that card that is otherwise a bird that is flying, but it has the same name. So 2 legendary creatures with the same name, if we control them both, we have to legend rule one away. We can only have one creature that's legendary that has a specific name at any time. If we ever have more than one, we pick one and all the other ones go to the graveyard. That's called the legend rule. So we could not say cast Mockingbird and have it come in as a copy of the Lord of the Eagles, even if we pay all that mana. Or rather, we can do that, but as soon as we do, we have to put either the Mockingbird or the original Lord of the Eagles into the graveyard, because Mockingbird will have the name the Lord of the Eagles, and they'd both be legendary. So just want to watch out for the legendary thing for a clone effect, like Mockingbird has, but otherwise, pretty powerful. Yeah. Next up, we have Siren Stormtamer, another single blue mana for a 1/1 flyer. This is a Siren Pirate Wizard that says pay a blue and sacrifice this creature to counter target spell or ability that targets you or a creature you control. So this is here to be a 1/1 flyer for us that can protect either us or one of our things. You know, it costs us sacrificing the Stormtamer, but if we do that, it's okay, because we're probably doing it as a way to protect one of our other things, like maybe our commander. For example, if someone were to use a kill spell like Go for the Throat on our commander, it would kill our commander. But if we use Siren Stormtamer to counter that spell, it's almost like we've redirected that kill spell at the Siren Stormtamer, because it ends up being that spell goes to the graveyard and the Stormtamer is dead, rather than that spell going to the graveyard and our commander is dead. So kind of a similar thing. However, we can do other things like an ability. If someone has an ability that would tap our commander and we don't want that to happen, we can sacrifice the Stormtamer to protect our commander. Or if someone casts a spell like Imprisoned in the Moon, which would turn our commander into a non-creature that targets, so we can counter it with Siren Stormtamer, and that's even better than protecting our commander from a kill spell, because then that would have locked our commander down and made it hard for us to get it back into the command zone in the first place. So lots of utility from this kind of card, especially for just 1 mana, and again, it flies. So that 1 power that it has is discounting our commander. Next we have Sleep Cursed Fairy. This is a pretty cool one. This is a 3/3 Fairy Wizard for a single blue with flying and ward 2, but it enters tapped with 3 stun counters on it, which means every time it would become untapped, it does not, and instead we take a stun counter off of it. So it comes in as a 3/3 flyer that is stunned for 3 rounds, or at least 3 rounds. We're going to have to wait until our next turn to remove the first one from it when we untap it, and the turn after that we remove another one, the turn after that we remove another one, and it's still tapped. So it's only the 4th turn after it comes in that it actually untaps and we can do things with it. Except that it has the ability, if we pay 1 and a blue, we can untap it. Which means if it has any stun counters on it, it won't untap it, it will just remove one of those stun counters. So we can accelerate it sort of waking up from sleep if we want to. But what's especially nice about this is, even if we don't do that, it doesn't matter if it's tapped for purposes of how much is it contributing to the discount for our commander. This is a 1 mana card that discounts our commander by 3 at least. You know, I say at least because it might have an anthem effect or some other sort of pump effect on it. So that's a pretty nice way to accelerate into our commander. So do we want to spend our mana on untapping this, or on playing other things that also get us toward our commander, and then eventually on our commander? We can wait for the fairy to wake up. And if someone wants to try and stop us from that, it has ward 2, so it's likelier to be harder for them to do. So why would they? It's tapped. What are they trying to stop? Which gives us that more guaranteed discount. Next we have Spectral Sailor, another 1 mana flyer. This is a single blue for a 1/1 Spirit Pirate with flash and flying. So we can flash this in on an opponent's turn, which seems pretty good. Surprise blocker, play it during our opponent to the right's end step, so we can untap with it and attack right away if we want to. Just very nice, but also it's a mana sink for us. We can pay 3 and a blue and draw a card with it whenever we want to, which means when Spectral Sailor's in play, if we've got 4 mana up and we've got nothing else to do with it, we're always going to dump it into the Sailor and just draw as many cards as we can, because having cards is better than not having cards. Having mana and no cards is the opposite way you want things to be. You'd rather have no mana and plenty of cards. Gives you more options. Next up is Cloud of Fairies. This is 1 and a blue for a 1/1 flying fairy that says when it enters, we untap up to 2 lands. So that's pretty good. It's, in a way, as long as we have 2 lands untapped, we can cast Cloud of Fairies and immediately untap them, so it's like we paid nothing. We had to be able to front the 2 mana, but after it's come in, it's essentially free. So this is a pretty solid way for us to essentially get a free flyer into play, which is a free discount for our commander, and it's also a nice way for us to just, if we had a way to have a land that's not just a basic land, that has some sort of ability on it that we want to use, we could untap that land, and if we can activate the ability again, great. We're able to do that thanks to Cloud of Fairies. We do have several lands in our deck that are utility lands along that line. It's also the case that we have 1 or 2 lands that come in tapped. So Cloud of Fairies, if we play one of those tap lands as one of our lands for the turn, we cast Cloud of Fairies using other lands, and we have those tap lands untap, and maybe they're better for us than the basic lands we might have used to cast this. So yeah, good options for all of these things. And Cloud of Fairies has cycling 2, which means we can pay 2 generic mana while this is in our hand, and discard it from our hand to draw a card. So the idea here is, sometimes it's worth paying 2 mana to get a 1/1 flyer that untaps 2 lands. Other times, we might really think that this is not as helpful to us as whatever's on top of our library, so instead we pay 2 mana and discard this to draw a card. So essentially it's a 2 mana draw spell or a 2 mana creature spell that is actually a free creature spell. Pretty good. Next up, we have a great one. It's Emrakul's Messenger. This is a little bit strange in this deck. It's 1 and a blue for a 2/1 Eldrazi Fairy Rogue with flying, and whenever we draw our second card each turn, we make a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature token with sacrifice this token to add a colorless mana. So all of this to say, this is here to take advantage of the fact that we're drawing so many cards in this deck. Every time we draw our second card, not every other card, just the second one on each turn that we would draw cards, we get an extra little token friend that sits in the battlefield as a 0/1. It doesn't fly, but we can sacrifice it for mana, which is pretty nice, being able to essentially ramp ourselves or use these as chump blockers. That's a pretty good effect for our deck. The one thing to know about Emrakul's Messenger, however, is that it has Devoid. This is the only card in the deck that's like this. It's weird. It looks like a blue card, and it would be if it didn't have Devoid, because Devoid means it has no color. And this functions in all zones, so it's relevant for if we were to cast a card that gives us a trigger from one of our creatures or one of our other effects that says whenever you cast a blue spell, or blue spells you cost 1 less to cast. Technically, Emrakul's Messenger is not blue, it is colorless. So this will not apply for anything that cares about blue spells or blue creatures. It's worth remembering, and it's very rarely relevant in Commander, but in this deck it is relevant because we have a couple of effects that care about the color of our creatures. So something worth remembering, but still gives us quite a bit of value, and the Devoid is a very small drawback, so not a big deal for us. Next up we have Malcolm Alluring Scoundrel. 1 and a blue for a 2/1 legendary Siren Pirate with flash and flying, another great flash creature, that says whenever Malcolm deals combat damage to a player, put a chorus counter on it. Now, chorus counters don't have an inherent mechanical meaning, it's just that Malcolm uses them for later in this ability. So don't worry about it, it's just a counter that counts how many times Malcolm has done combat damage to a player. So when he does combat damage to a player, he gets a chorus counter, then we draw a card and discard a card. We have to do both, but that gives us selection. It means we get to draw whatever's on top of our library, and then whatever's in our hand that we need least, we throw away. Or maybe we don't choose something that we need least, because after we discard that, if there are 4 or more chorus counters on Malcolm, we may cast that discarded card without paying its mana cost. So the first 3 times Malcolm does combat damage to a player, we're going to throw away the card that we need least. The 4th time he does, and every time thereafter, we're going to throw away the card that is most relevant to us in that moment, or at the least the very most expensive card, because we can then cast it immediately. We don't get to hold on to it. We have to cast it right away as part of the resolution of this, if we want, because it is a may, we don't have to. But if we choose to, we cast it immediately as part of resolving this ability. It goes on the stack, and if it resolves, we get that spell. Great. Next up is Mischievous Mystic. This is kind of similar to Emrakul's Messenger. It's 1 and a blue for a 2/1 flying human wizard that says whenever we draw our second card each turn, we make a 1/1 blue fairy creature token with flying. So we get to add more flyers to our board, and remember, each of those flyers, its power does count toward our commander's discount. Pretty nice. Next is Ornithopter of Paradise, something that adds nothing to our commander's discount. However, it's 2 generic mana for a 0/2 artifact creature Thopter that flies, and we can tap it to add 1 mana of any color. So we're only looking to add blue in this deck, but that's pretty good. We can use this as a flyer that can block for us. If we have an effect that pumps up all of our flyers, then it will contribute its power to our commander's discount. But in any case, this is just an extra mana rock for us, a way to produce mana beyond our lands. So nice little bit of acceleration for us. And look how cute it is. Notably, it looks like a bird, but it is not a bird type. It is a Thopter type. So if that's relevant, just so you know. Next is actually a bird. This is Plume Creed Escort, 1 and a blue for a 2/1 bird scout with flash and flying that says when it enters, target creature you control gains hexproof until end of turn. So it can't be targeted by spells or abilities our opponents control. That's why this has flash. So we can, if our commander, or we'll use our commander as an example, but any creature gets targeted by our opponent's stuff, we can flash in Plume Creed Escort, choose that same creature that's getting targeted by our opponent, and that creature now has hexproof. Then our opponent's ability or spell tries to resolve, and it fails to because it doesn't have a legal target. It's currently targeting something it cannot target since that creature has hexproof. This is a great way to protect our commander if someone uses something to destroy or exile it or tap it down or anything along those lines. So yeah, pretty nice to have the Plume Creed Escort. And if our commander does get removed at another point, this is a 2/1 flyer, so again, it's contributing 2 points to our commander's discount, which covers 1 instance of the commander tax. Pretty good. Next up, we have one from a recent set. This is from the Marvel Superheroes set. It is the Wondrous Wasp. Another 2/1 flash flyer for 1 and a blue. This is a legendary human hero that says Wasp's Sting. When the Wondrous Wasp enters, we tap up to 1 target creature, and it loses all abilities for as long as the Wondrous Wasp remains on the battlefield. So that means we can sort of humble something. It's not a real humble effect, because humble effects normally make something into a 1/1 as well. But if an opponent has, a commander or a really cool value creature that's giving them a lot of value from its abilities, we can have the Wondrous Wasp tap it down, which only lasts until they untap with it, but it loses all its abilities, and it keeps those abilities lost until the Wondrous Wasp leaves the battlefield. So this is a good way to turn someone's commander off, or turn off one of their great creatures that's giving them a lot of extra value. Plus, it's a 2/1 flyer, and it can be flashed in to surprise an opponent. Like, if you see that they've got a commander that has a tap ability that they can only activate at sorcery speed, maybe at the start of their upkeep, you flash in the Wondrous Wasp, tap down their commander, so they're not going to be able to activate it this turn anyway, and they can't activate it again because it loses its ability. Neat. Next, we've got Brazen Borrower. Oh, I love Brazen Borrower. It looks a little weird down here because this is an adventure creature. The way this works is this is actually 2 spells in 1. One half of it is Brazen Borrower. It's 1 and double blue for a fairy rogue with flash and flying that can only block creatures with flying, and it's a 3/1. However, it also has an instant speed adventure spell built into it called Petty Theft, which returns target non-land permanent an opponent controls to its owner's hand. So the way this works is we can either play just the fairy, and if we do, we just get the fairy, a 3 mana 3/1 flash flyer that can only block flyers. Or we can send it on an adventure first, and that means we cast Petty Theft, this is an instant for 2 that bounces non-land permanent, And after Petty Theft resolves, the card does not go to the graveyard, it goes to exile. And from exile, we're allowed to cast the creature half of it only whenever we want to. As long as we've got the mana for it, we can flash it in at instant speed on that same turn, on a later turn, on an opponent's turn, whatever we want. We cannot cast this spell while the fairy is in play. He can only go on an adventure and then enter play, or simply just come in. We don't have to cast the spell, but if you've cast Brazen Borrower and it's in play, Petty Theft is not available to you anymore. You can only cast this from your hand, and when you do, the card is exiled, and you can cast Brazen Borrower after that from exile. So yeah, that's how adventures work. Next is Highspire Bellringer. This is 2 and a blue for a 1/4 Djinn Monk with flying that says our second spell each turn costs 1 less to cast. This is a small but effective benefit for us. If we are drawing a lot of cards, we have the ability to double spell, to cast multiple spells in a turn, and Highspire Bellringer makes it so we have more flexibility in doing so because we can cast a cheaper creature first, like a 1 mana creature, and that discounts our second spell by 1 generic mana, almost like we got that first spell for free. Or, we cast a 2-drop and then another 2-drop and we're only spending 3 on it total. Something worth noting. However, just like with our commander, this discount only applies to generic mana costs. It will not reduce the amount of blue mana required, just the amount of generic mana required. That's how that works. Next up, we have a god from Amonkhet originally. This is Kefnet the Mindful. 2 and a blue for a 5/5 legendary god with flying and indestructible that can't attack or block unless we have 7 or more cards in hand. Not hard for us to do in this deck, but something worth remembering. It is a 5/5 flying indestructible creature, even if it can't attack or block though, which means it is a 5/5 flyer, so it's discounting our commander, if our commander hasn't been cast yet, by 5 mana on its own, and that only cost us 3 to put in play. And Kefnet has the ability, if we pay 3 in a blue, to draw us a card, and then we have permission to put a land from the battlefield that we control into our hand. We can bounce a land. The reason we might want to do that is because that's putting 2 cards in our hand. We draw one, we take one of our lands and put it back in our hand, which does slow us down a touch, but if we haven't made our land drop that turn, we can then play that same land that we already had whenever we want to that turn, during our main phase. The reason we might want to do this is because if we've got 5 cards in hand, we can pay 4 mana, draw a 6th card, and then put a land in hand, so now we have 7 cards in hand, and we can attack and block with Kefnet. Since this is all something we can do at instant speed, if we have 5 or 6 cards in hand, we can activate this and draw a card, and if we want, put a land in hand, something we may not need to do if we had 6 cards when we started this. We can do this all during combat when an opponent has attacked us. They're like, oh, Kefnet can't attack or block, right? And we're like, yep, we don't currently have 7 or more cards in hand. And then they attack us, we activate Kefnet, now we do have 7 or more cards in hand, and we can block with our 5/5 flying indestructible god. Awesome. Next, we have Kira Great Glass Spinner. This is a classic one from original Kamigawa block. Original Betrayers of Kamigawa, there you go. This is 1 and double blue for a 2/2 legendary spirit with flying that says creatures we control have this ability. Whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell or an ability for the first time each turn, counter that spell or ability. Now this is a little tricky because it says creatures you control. That includes Kira. Kira is a creature we control. But it also says whenever this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability for the first time each turn. It does not say the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls for the first time. That means when Kira's out, if we try to target our own things with spells or abilities, the first time it happens each turn, it's going to be countered. Now that's only if they haven't already been targeted. Let me explain. Let's say we have our Plume Creed Escort right here. It enters and makes something hexproof until end of turn. Kira is in play, let's say, and someone targets Kira with a kill spell, right? It's going to get countered because Kira has become the target of a spell or ability for the first time each turn. That gets countered. But what if they follow it up with a second kill spell? Well, it's no longer the first time each turn, so it's not going to get countered, but we could then flash in our Plume Creed Escort to target it with the Plume Creed Escort's ability and give it hexproof, which will get rid of that second spell and protect Kira from it, since Kira would be hexproof. However, if, for whatever reason, we were to flash in Plume Creed Escort first, it would target Kira with its ability, and Kira would counter Plume Creed Escort's ability, because it's the first time it's been targeted that turn. It doesn't say targeted by each player, it's just targeted at all. And all of the things I'm talking about for Kira are true for all of our creatures. So it's a little bit complicated, but it most of the time helps. Because something like, creatures you control with flying get +0/+1, like Sprite Noble has, that doesn't target. Only effects that say the word target actually target. So generally, we are not, for the most part, targeting our own things, unless it's in a reactive way, like with Plume Creed Escort, which means it's already been targeted by something else. So mostly Kira is here to protect all of our creatures. But it is worth noting that Kira, and the ability that Kira grants, can counter our own effects or spells if we're not careful. So yeah. Next we have Loyal Drake. This is 2 and a blue for a 2/2 Drake. It's a Wind Drake. Wind Drakes are blue, or they're 3 mana 2/2 flyers. So yeah, it's a 3 mana 2/2 flyer, and it has a Lieutenant ability. At the beginning of combat on our turn, if we control our commander, we draw a card. As long as our commander is in play, we draw a card. And in play and we control it, that is. So yeah, just a nice little bonus for us that may help us cast our commander. It's 2 power, so it can help get the Lord of the Eagles in play a little earlier. And if we do that prior to combat, we will then go to combat on our turn. And it doesn't matter that our commander has Summoning Sickness. We control it, so we draw a card. Next, we have Sprite Noble, which I mentioned a moment ago. This is 1 and double blue for a 2/2 Fairy Noble. This is the only noble in the deck, other than the Lord of the Eagles, who is a bird noble. Kind of neat. This is a flyer, so it's another 3 mana 2/2 flyer, and it gives all of our other creatures that we have with flying +0/+1. So a little bit of protection for our creatures by giving them a higher power. With our commander in play, it makes our commander into an 8/9. And we can tap the noble, and all of our other creatures with flying get +1/+0 until end of turn, which stacks with this. It makes it so by tapping the Sprite Noble until end of turn, all of our other flyers have +1/+1. Pretty nice for us as a way to sneak in a little extra damage. If we attack with several different flyers and they're not blocked, before damage, we can tap our Sprite Noble and give all of them +1/+0. Seems good. It just means we would not be able to attack with the Sprite Noble, since that would cause it to tap, and so we couldn't activate the tap ability. Next we have Tempest's Djinn. This is another Djinn for us. It's triple blue for a 0/4 Djinn with flying that gets +1/+1 for each basic island we control. We've got a lot of basic islands in this deck. I think we have 27 of them. So this is not likely to become a 27/4. We're not likely to see all of our lands. But just having this be a 4/4 for 3 is pretty sweet. And remember, it gets a power boost for each island we control, and that power boost translates to a discount to our commander for each island we control. So it's like each island is counting as 2 mana for us. 1 because we can tap it for our commander, and 1 because it adds to Tempest Djinn's power, which discounts our commander's generic mana cost. Pretty cool. Next is Warden of Evos Isle. 2 and a blue for a 2/2 bird wizard. It's a bird and a wizard. It flies, and it gives all of our creature spells with flying a discount of 1 generic mana. So now this does not affect all of our birds, all of our flyers, because we have a lot of flyers that don't cost any generic mana. For example, Tempest Djinn costs triple blue, so Warden of Evil's Isle doesn't discount the Djinn at all. However, this is a nice bird, it's a nice effect in a Flyers deck, and it's sort of the thing that people expect to see in a mono blue Flyers deck, even though in order to make it truly worthwhile, just a little bit of insight here. Effects that discount spells by a single generic mana, the math says you shouldn't run them unless you have at least 40 hits for that in your deck. And we've got a lot of discounts in this deck, which, like I mentioned during the Heart of the Deck section, I don't usually run discount effects at all, because the steepness of that requirement of 40 hits is so high, simply because the math says if you're running a discount effect that only discounts by 1 and has fewer than 40 hits, it's usually better to simply run another mana rock or a ramp piece like that. So with Warden of Evil's Isle, in this deck it's not making that spot, but it's a fun card. It's something people expect to see in a blue, mono blue Flyers deck, and I like it. It was in standard for M21, is that right? Core 20, yeah, Core 2020. So yeah, I like this card, so we're running it. There you go. Next up is Wingblade Disciple, another one of these ones from Tarkir Dragonstorm. It's 2 and a blue for a 2/2 human monk with flying that has a flurry ability. Whenever we cast our second spell each turn, we make a 1/1 white bird creature token with flying. So great, we're making more tokens. We have to cast our second spell, so we're only doing it we're only doing once on each of our turns, but that's okay. Another 2/2 flyer for 3 that makes even more power in the air, so thereby discounts our commander increasingly. Seems good to me. Next we have Ethereal Investigator. This is a neat one. This is 3 and a blue for a 2/3 flying spirit that says when it enters, we investigate X times, where X is the number of opponents we have. So if we have 3 opponents, we will investigate 3 times. To investigate, it means we make a clue token, which is an artifact token that has pay 2 generic mana and sacrifice it to draw a card. So it's sort of like we get some cards on layaway in the form of these clues, but we can use those whenever we want. They just sort of stick around until then. And whenever we draw our second card each turn, we make a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. How do we know that we're going to draw our second card during a turn? Well, we've got these clues, so once we've drawn our card for the turn during our draw step, if we've got the mana for it, we just pay 2, crack the clue, draw a second card, that triggers our investigator, and we get a nice spirit. So yeah, pretty cool. This also triggers, even if we're not using clues to do so, and we've got a lot of draw in this deck, so lots of ways for us to get more spirits, and therefore more power in the air, and a discount for our commander. Next up, we have another one from a recent Marvel set. It's Herbie Scout Unit. This one is just, I don't know this guy. This is a Fantastic Four character. It's a 2/1 flying artifact creature robot scout for 4 generic mana that says when it enters, we draw a card, and then we may put a land card from our hand onto the battlefield tapped. This is Growth Spiral, which is a 2 mana spell. So this is sort of like a 2/1 flyer for 2 that comes with a 2 mana spell attached to it. So yeah, it's not bad. It's sort of the sad robot for this deck. Or I guess he's a pretty happy robot, but it's a Solemn Simulacrum for this deck, since it contributes to the flying power. And yeah, so Herbie's fine. Next we have High Fade Trickster, a great one from Foundations. 3 and a blue for a 4/2 fairy wizard with flash, flying, and you may cast spells as though they had flash. So we can flash in all of our spells, not just our creatures. All of our spells are just as flashy, if you'll pardon the pun, as our commander. Terrific. We can even flash in the Trickster first and then use more mana to cast other spells now that they all have flash. And our Trickster is contributing 4 power to our commander's discount. And remember, our commander costs 7 and double blue, so now with just the Trickster in play, our commander essentially costs 3 and double blue, so that's great. Next is Sphinx of Foresight. I really like this one. This is 2 and double blue for a 4/4 Sphinx with flying. That's awesome. Just a 4/4 flyer for 4. That's already good. And it says at the beginning of your upkeep, scry 1. So a free scry every turn. With all of the card draw in our deck, this really helps us get, unwanted lands off the top of our library, or maybe cards we can't quite cast yet, or just things that we don't need at that point. That kind of selection is really good. But even better, maybe, is the fact that if this is in our opening hand, we may reveal it from our opening hand, and if we do, we get to scry 3 at the beginning of our very first upkeep. Before we draw our first card at the start of the game, we already get to scry, so it's like we have selection for our opening hand, and for our opening draw. So it's just very cool as a nice little bonus benefit for us. Even without that though, a 4 mana 4/4 flyer that scries at your upkeep sounds great for this deck. Next we have Tide Skimmer. 3 and a blue for a 2/3 Drake with flying that says whenever you attack with 2 or more creatures with flying, draw a card. It's only 1 card, no matter how many creatures you're attacking with. As long as you have more than 1 creature you're attacking with and they both have flying, and at least 2 of them have flying, you draw a card. But it's not like you draw 2 cards if you attack with 4 flying creatures. Still, 1 card every time you attack seems good, since we're going to be attacking with a lot of creatures as often as we can. Next is Vulture Feathered Fiend, another Marvel one. This is 2 and double blue for a 2/4 legendary human artificer villain with flying that says whenever 1 or more creatures you control with flying deal combat damage to a player, put a 1/1 counter on each of those creatures and draw a card. As long as you can connect with your flyers, and that includes Vulture himself and includes our commander, any of the creatures that hit get a 1/1 counter and draw a card for us. No, I'm sorry, we only draw a single card no matter how many creatures hit, but each of the creatures does get a counter. So yeah, pretty good. Notably though, I want to call out the fact that this is 1/1 counters because we've already seen our, where is it? I lost it? Our Flitwing Nuisance. So the Flitwing Nuisance has a -1/-1 counter on it. If we were to put a +1/+1 counter on it while it still has that -1/-1 counter, the two counters annihilate each other. We just remove them both until if there's a different number of them, like if somehow we were to put two +1/+1 counters on the Nuisance, then we would remove one of those +1/+1 counters, the -1/-1 counter, and it would just keep a single +1/+1 counter. They just sort of get rid of themselves. But I want to call out the fact that this says pay 2 and a blue and remove a counter from it. It doesn't have to be that -1/-1 counter. Like I mentioned before, if we get counters on it from Vulture, then we can remove those as well to get that same effect from that creature that we could get if we were to remove the -1/-1 counter. But in any case, Vulture pumps up our whole team and draws us a card when we do damage with any number of flyers. Seems good. Next we have Defiler of Dreams. This is 3 and double blue for a 4/3 flying Phyrexian Sphinx. Gross. That has, I'm going to talk about this ability first. Whenever you cast a blue permanent spell, draw a card. That's great. It replaces every blue permanent spell that we cast with a card in our hand. Notably, that does not include our Emrakul's Messenger, because Emrakul's Messenger has Devoid. It's not blue. It also doesn't include something like Ornithopter of Paradise or Herbie, because those are permanent spells, but they aren't blue. But anything that's a blue permanent, including non-creatures, and including our commander, will let us draw a card when off of Defiler of Dreams when we cast it. And in addition, we can pay an extra cost when we cast any blue permanent spell of 2 life. Pay 2 of our life, and if we do, it costs 1 blue mana less for each if we paid our life that way, but only blue mana. So this is a way to reduce blue mana by 1 blue pip for any blue permanent spell at the cost of 2 life instead. So essentially, we're saying rather than at one of these blue pips, we're going to pay 2 life instead. So I know it seems not that great to lose life, but it's worth 2 life in a format where you have 40 life to start with if it helps you cast important blue permanent spells like your commander. If the Lord of the Eagles has been discounted by the power of all your flyers to simply 2 blue mana, Defiler of Dreams says, do you want to pay 2 blue mana or do you want to pay 1 blue mana and just 2 life? Which maybe you only have 1 life or 1 mana left in your available to you in your land base. It's worth 2 life to get your huge 8/8 commander back into play, and in addition, draw a card off of it, since you're casting a blue permanent spell. So this is a discount effect. What we like to think of this as is paying 2 life rather than a blue is paying a Phyrexian blue mana on it. So this is really, really powerful, and if you're maybe new to Magic and you're not used to using life as a resource, this seems scarier than it actually is. But just remember, being able to cast spells at a discount means casting more spells per turn and therefore per game than you otherwise would. And the more spells you cast, the better you're doing, the likelier you are to win. So yeah, it's worth paying some life, because if you pay a bunch of life to discount your spells, it doesn't matter if you've lost that life if you've already won the game. Anyway, Defiler of Dreams is sweet in this deck. Even sweeter, though, is Emeritus of Ideation. Oh, this is cool. Now, if you're a new player, seeing this split text box down here makes you think, maybe, of adventure cards, like that Brazen Borrower we saw. This is not an adventure card. This is a prepare card. It's on the other side. Just go with me for a second. I'll explain. So what we want to look at just is the creature. It's Emeritus of Ideation, 3 and double blue for a 5/5 flying Ward 2 human wizard. That's already great. A 5/5 for 5 that flies and protects itself with Ward 2, already solid, discounts our commander by 5, and it enters prepared. What that means is, while it is prepared, we can cast its prepare spell while this is in play. We have to follow timing restrictions, but its prepare spell is an instant, And when we cast this, it unprepares this creature. So it's no longer prepared, so we don't have access to that spell. We can't cast it from exile anymore. The spell is the most powerful spell in the history of Magic. It's Ancestral Recall. It's a blue mana for an instant that has target player draw 3 cards. Usually that's just us. We just have this come in for 5 mana, and hopefully we've got 1 extra mana lying around so we can immediately cast it and replace it with 3 cards in our hand. Incredible. And whenever the Emeritus of Ideation attacks, we may exile 8 cards from our graveyard if we've got that many. And if we do, it becomes prepared again. So that's immediately prepared again. We can cast even right then during combat while it's attacking, Ancestral Recall, and draw ourselves 3 more cards. Now notably, it can only be prepared once. So if it's already prepared, and we attack with it and we exile 8 cards, it will just remain prepared. It's not double prepared. You have to have it unprepared by casting Ancestral Recall in order to prepare it again. And this is something that is sort of icing on the cake. It's really nice to be able to think that Emeritus of Ideation is something that we can prepare a second time and then cast Ancestral Recall a second time. But generally, if we can cast this for 5 mana while we have 6 mana up, and we immediately spend that last mana to cast Ancestral Recall, we've gotten a huge amount of value out of this, beyond just what it has printed on it, it feels like, just because Ancestral Recall is such a powerful spell. So the idea of being able to prepare it again seems crazy to me. No one at the table should be letting you do that. They should try and kill this thing. But if they do, and you're able to get that to happen, it's not something you should expect. It's still a very, very good card even without that. But if it happens, bully for you. You're getting closer to winning the game. Next up, we have Mold Drifter, a classic. This is 4 and a blue for a 2/2 elemental with flying that says when it enters, we draw 2 cards. Great, it replaces itself and gets us up 1 card. It also has Evoke for 2 and a blue, which is an alternate casting cost. Instead of paying 4 and a blue, we can pay 2 and a blue, and if we cast it for its Evoke cost, when it enters, we sacrifice it. So it immediately comes in and dies right away. The reason we might do that is because when it enters, we also draw 2 cards. So we can treat this as though it's a creature, or we can treat this as though it's a spell called Divination, which is 2 and a blue to draw 2 cards, since this would come in, draw us those cards, and leave the battlefield. However, there is a trick with Mold Drifter in this deck, and here's what it is. We have a bunch of creatures that have flash, including our commander. So imagine that you have 5 mana available to you, and 3 of them are blue. Well, you can say, I'm going to evoke Mold Drifter for 2 and a blue. It will enter the battlefield. Its 2 triggers go on the stack, one that will draw us 2 cards, and one that will sacrifice itself since we evoked it. But with those triggers on the stack, Mold Drifter is still in play. So I'm going to cast my commander, because my commander is discounted by 2 thanks to the Mold Drifter while it's still in play. And since our commander has flash, we can flash it in right then. Essentially, the Mold Drifter costs 5 mana, but what we can do is just evoke it, and before its evoke trigger resolves, flash in our commander, taking advantage of its discount if we needed that discount to cast our commander. And if our commander therefore is down to 2 mana, then we've spent 5 mana, gotten our commander in to stay in play rather than Mold Drifter, and we've drawn 2 cards. So we want the cute fish bird thing to stick around, but if we don't want to cast it for 4 and a blue, we cast it for 2 and a blue. Just get 2 cards, and maybe get its value from our commander while those abilities are still on the stack. It's an option. Next up, we have one from a somewhat more recent set, Duskmourn. This is Overlord of the Flood Pits. 3 and double blue gives us a 5/3 enchantment creature avatar horror with flying that says whenever it enters or attacks, we draw 2 cards and then discard a card. Now, we've talked about discarding cards a minute ago, but I want to draw your attention back to Emeritus of Ideation. It lets us exile cards from our graveyard, and if we exile 8 of them when it attacks, then it becomes prepared again. How do we get those cards in our graveyard without our creatures dying? Overlord of the Flood Pits is one of the ways, because it lets us draw 2 cards and discard a card. So we just throw something in the graveyard that we don't need, intending to exile it with Emeritus of Ideation to re-prepare the Emeritus if we have a chance to do so. May not be necessary for us, but it sure would be nice, and so if the Emeritus is already in play or in our hand, this is a good way to set ourselves up for that. But in any case, drawing 2 and discarding 1 is great card selection, and it makes us up 1 card aggregate, so that's still a pretty nice thing when this enters and when it attacks. As a 5/3 for 5 that flies and gives us that kind of advantage for cards, that seems pretty good, but it also has one other ability, which is Impending 4 for 1 and double blue. This is another alternate casting cost. Rather than paying 3 and double blue, we can pay 1 and double blue, and this will come in with 4 time counters on it. Time counters don't have an inherent mechanical meaning, they're just used by this ability, and while it has those time counters on it, it isn't a creature. What that means is it's just an enchantment. It will still have its abilities, it will be a flying enchantment, which is weird, and it will enter and draw us 2 cards and then have us discard a card, but it won't be able to attack or block because it's not a creature. And then at the beginning of our end step, we remove a time counter from it. So it comes in for 3 mana, draws us 2, has us discard 1, and sits there until our end step, at which point we remove one of the 4 time counters. Then the next turn, we remove another counter during our end step. And the next turn, and the last turn after that, we remove the 4th time counter during our end step, and now it's a creature again, or a creature at all. So that the turn after that, we can attack with it as a 5/3 flyer that will trigger when it attacks, draw us 2 more cards, and have us discard a card. So the idea here being, we can play this for 3 mana, draw 2 and discard 1, and then we have to wait 4 turns for it to become a real creature again, which is okay. It will not discount our commander while it is impending, because even though it still has flying, it is not a creature. And our commander only cares about the total power of creatures we control with flying. If it's not a creature, it's not a creature, and if it's not a creature, it doesn't have power. So yeah, this is a pretty nice thing for us to do to just cast, and for it just hard cast it rather than impend it, but we have the ability to impend it if we want to. And when we cast this, we are casting a creature spell. So if we have something that discounts our creature spells, Overlord of the Flood Pits will be discounted by it, even if we use its impending cost. Its impending cost does not make it an enchantment spell, it remains a creature spell until it resolves, and then it comes in with those time counters and suddenly is not a creature. So the discounts that we have on specifically creatures do apply to Overlord of the Flood Pits if we cast it for impending or if we cast it for its regular cost, just so you know. Next is Peregrine Drake. Remember that Cloud of Fairies we saw earlier that was 1 and a blue that would come in and untap 2 lands? Peregrine Drake is a 2/3 Drake for 4 and a blue that comes in, it flies, and when it enters, we untap 5 lands. So this is really, really powerful for us. If we have, again, it's a free creature that we have to front 5 mana for, but the way you want to think of it is this. What if you have 5 lands? Well, you tap them, you play the Peregrine Drake, now you have 5 lands untapped again. But what if you have 5 lands and 2 mana rocks? Well, tap all 7 of them. Now you've got 7 mana in your pool, you use 5 of it to play the Peregrine Drake, you untap your 5 lands, and now you've still got 7 mana available to you. But you untapped lands that you had only tapped to have their mana float. This is a way to just generate even more mana than it seems like this would make, or to get more uses out of it than it seems like you would. This is still turning 5 untapped lands into, or 5 tapped lands into 5 untapped lands. But it gives you the ability to float that mana and use your mana from rocks in a way that gives you more of an advantage than it seems like. I know this sounds like I'm doing voodoo math here, but trust me. And again, just like with the Cloud of Fairies example, if you have a land that has an activated ability or that would come in tapped, this can help you get access to that mana or to those abilities when you wouldn't otherwise be able to. Yeah, this is just a very strong card. Even though it's only a 2/3 flyer, that's still a 2/3 flyer that essentially is free. Pretty good. Next, we have Thrix, the Sudden Storm. 3 and double blue for a 4/5 legendary elemental giant with flash and flying, and spells we cast with mana value 5 or greater costs 1 generic mana less to cast and can't be countered. That kind of protective ability is pretty powerful. For a 5 mana 4/5 flyer that we can flash in and suddenly be able to block with, that sounds pretty good to me. But our commander, no matter what it's discounted by, its mana value does not change. Its mana value is always going to be 9, which means with Thrix in play, our commander, no matter what we're paying for it, is going to get an additional 1 generic mana discount and will not be counterable. All of our spells, mana 5 or greater, are getting that discount, not just creatures either. So I think we have 14 spells in the deck that are mana value greater than 3. Maybe that's not right. Let's actually take a look. So we've got mana value greater than 4. We have 14 spells in the deck. Yeah, 14. And that includes Thrix himself. So that's 13 different other spells that will be discounted. Or that can be discounted by a generic mana. Including something like Overlord of the Flood Pits. If we impend it, we are casting it for an alternate casting cost, but its mana value is still 5. So with Thrix in play, this we can impend for just double blue if we wanted to do that. Similarly, another fun trick, Peregrine Drake is mana value 5. So that means we can tap 5 lands, but we only, with Thrix in play, have to pay 4 mana for it. So it'll come in, untap those 5 lands, and now we're mana positive, and we've turned a discount into additional mana we can spend on other things. Pretty neat. Next we have Windstorm Drake. 4 and a blue for a 3/3 Drake with flying. It gives all of our other creatures with flying +1/+0. This can just really add up, not just for our big creatures, but for our many, many small creatures like our Thopters and our Spirits and our 1/1 birds, Having these creatures become 2/1s, or having this would not get a benefit from it because it says other, but turning Thrix into a 5/5, turning Peregrine Drake into a 3/3, this can just add an awful lot of damage, and it adds to the discount on our commander since everything has a bigger power, and that's what we care about for our discount. Cool. Next up, we have Dream Eater. This is an awesome card from, I think, Guilds of Ravnica originally. Am I right? Yeah, there we go. This is 4 and double blue for a 4/3 Nightmare Sphinx with flash and flying, another flash flyer, that says when it enters, we surveil 4. To surveil is like scrying. What it lets us do is we look at the top 4 cards of our library, we can put any of them back on top of our library that we want in whatever order we want, and any we don't want to put back, we can put in the graveyard. Either back to the graveyard or top, and we can put the ones on top in whatever order we want. That's pretty nice. When we do that, we may return a non-land permanent an opponent controls to its owner's hand. So we get to bounce something of an opponent's, which is a removal effect. They can recast it, sure, but they don't get it right now. And if it was something that was a reacher or a flyer that could block us, we're getting something out of the way so that our skies are clear to swing in and not have to worry about being blocked, so we're likelier to be able to deal our damage and not have our creatures die. Awesome. Plus, we can do this on an opponent's turn because this Dream Eater has flash, so we can bounce something that an opponent controls that might be attacking us right then, or that maybe we're doing it on the opponent to our right, on their instep, so that something of our opponents that we think is going to be dangerous for the next turn cycle, like a Door to Nothingness or something that they can activate to kill someone, but it comes in tapped. Now we've bounced it, so they have to replay it, and it comes in tapped again, and yeah, we can do a lot of fun things with this. Next is Meringue River Regent. I know you're thinking, wait, it's back on the left side, so this is another adventure, right? Nope, this is an omen. It's slightly different than an adventure, but we'll talk about it. So this is Meringue River Regent, 4 and double blue for a 6/7 dragon with flying that says when it enters, return up to 2 other target non-land permanents to their owner's hands. This is really cool for us because it doesn't just let us bounce stuff that our opponents control. It says 2 other non-land permanents, not that your opponents control. So we can bounce our own things with this. If we have something that has an enters trigger, like Herbie, which lets us draw a card and put a land into play if we want, or anything else that has an enters trigger, like, our Nightmare Sphinx that we just saw, which enters and lets us surveil 4. We can bounce those things to our hand and recast them to get their value again if we want. Or we use this, of course, just to remove our opponent's things, and they have to replay it, at whatever time they want. We also have an instant speed omen called Coil and Catch for 3 and a blue. An omen is special. It's not the same as an adventure in that once we cast it, it doesn't send the card to exile and then we can cast the creature. Instead, once it resolves, we shuffle the card back into our library. So this Coil and Catch lets us draw 3 cards and then discard a card, and then we shuffle the whole card back into our library if we've cast the omen. So the idea behind this is a modal card. This is a sort of a split card. We can either get a big creature that bounces some things, or we can get a draw 3 and discard, and then this shuffles back into our library. Now, we have put 3 cards in our hand and then discarded 1. So we're up 3, down 1, so we're sort of up 2. But we've also taken this card and shuffled it back into our library, so we haven't really lost it forever. So we're not really up 1 in our hand, but this remains in our library, and if we draw it again, we can either coil and catch it again, or we can cast it as the creature. So whichever we need in the moment, a big creature or some draw at instant speed, either are fine with us, but we don't get to do the adventure thing of casting this and then playing this from exile. So that's how omens work. Next we have Shadow Puppeteers. This card is so much fun in this deck. 6 and a blue, so it's an expensive one, for a 4/4 fairy wizard with flying and ward 2. It says, when this creature enters, create 2 1/1 black fairy rogue creature tokens with flying. So that means for 7 mana, we've put 4, 5, 6 power on the battlefield, which almost discounts our commander as much as it can be, because our commander is 7 and double blue. So this is 6 power in the air for 7 mana, all of it flies, and the 4/4 is a ward 2. And whenever a creature we control with flying attacks, we may have it become a red dragon with base power and toughness 4/4 in addition to its other colors and types until end of turn. So for example, if we play this and then the next turn we attack with our fairies, we're going to get a trigger for each of those fairies, and we can have them become 4/4 red and black fairy rogue dragons until end of turn. This is every creature we have with power or toughness below 4 becomes a 4/4. That's the way we treat this. So we do that, we attack with all of our flyers that are 4/4s, and if our commander's not in play, our commander is at max discount now because all of our creatures are still 4/4s during our second main phase when we cast our commander then. And in any case, this just turns all of our flyers into something dangerous. If our flyers are bigger than 4/4 with their base power and toughness, like our commander is, we just don't turn them into dragons. But if we have like a 1/1 flyer that has 3 counters on it, then it's a 4/4, but its base power and toughness are still 1/1. So we turn it into a 4/4 dragon, and now it's a 7/7 because its base power and toughness is 4/4, and it still has those 3 1/1 counters on it, so it's doing even more damage. This is just such a fun card in a mono blue flyers deck. I think I have maybe cast this card once in my life when I bought the precon that this comes from. And it's a fun precon, don't get me wrong, but it's just really great in this deck, especially because it comes with 2 1/1 flyers on its own when it comes in, and it protects itself. Awesome. Last in this section is Wind Reader Sphinx, another 7 mana one, 5 and double blue, for a 3/7 Sphinx, so a pretty good blocker. It flies, and it says whenever a creature with flying attacks, you may draw a card. This is so powerful, because not only does it let us draw a card when it attacks, when our commander attacks, when any of our other flyers attack, when any of our token flyers attacks, it does not say when a creature you control with flying attacks. If an opponent with a flyer attacks, we draw a card. If an opponent attacks with 5 flyers, we draw 5 cards. It doesn't matter if they're attacking us or anyone else. Any creature on the battlefield with flying, when it attacks, we get a payoff for that. And that even means our Wind Reader Sphinx does not have to attack, because we're going to get attacks, or we're going to get cards from attacking with all of our other creatures, which means this is a great 3/7 blocker. So if our opponents with flyers do attack, they're probably not going to attack us because they know it's going to be harder for them to get through, so it forces them to attack our opponents with their flyers, or encourages them to at least, which still gives us cards. This card is incredible in our deck. It is a 7 mana card, don't get me wrong, but yeah, it draws us so many cards just from our attackers, and noticing that the text does not preclude us from drawing cards from our opponents attacking flyers, yeah, very nice. And that is our flyers section of the deck. Oh hey, did you just like the video? Nice, I appreciate that. I'm just kidding. I do appreciate it, but you don't have to like the video just because I brought it up. I appreciate you being here either way. Thank you for joining me. So let's move on to the support sections of our deck, these 3 yellow categories right here. We're going to start with our card advantage section, which as usual, I have tagged as draw. It doesn't mean that all these cards do the draw a card action, they just give us access to more cards. For example, Flitterwing Nuisance, we can activate its ability by removing a counter from it and paying 2 and a blue, to make it so whenever any creature we control does combat damage to a player or planeswalker during that turn, we draw a card. Spectral Sailor we can activate for 3 and a blue and draw a card. Cloud of Fairies we can cycle to draw a card. So we don't get the creature, but we do get a different card. So it's like a 2-mana draw spell. Neat. Next we have Into the Royal. This is a removal effect, really. 1 and a blue for an instant that returns target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, but if the spell was kicked, we draw a card as well. And we kick it, if we want, for 1 and a blue, which is an additional cost. So if we pay 1 and a blue, it just bounces a non-land permanent, which could be one of our permanents. We could use this to protect our stuff, but usually we're using this to remove our opponent's stuff temporarily. Or we can pay 2 and double blue, 1 and a blue twice, to do everything I just said and also draw a card, so it replaces itself. I really like Into the Royal. Next is Kefnet. We can pay 3 and a blue to draw a card and maybe bounce one of our lands with Kefnet. Loyal Drake draws us a card at the start of combat on our turn if we control our commander. Winged Words is 2 and a blue for a sorcery that costs 1 generic less to cast if we control any creature with flying. So in our deck, this is usually 1 and a blue, and it draws us 2 cards. 2 and a blue and draw in order to draw 2 is Divination. Divination is totally fine in Commander. This is 1 and a blue to draw 2 cards as long as we control a flyer, so that's very good for us. Next we have Ethereal Investigator. It makes us some clues when it comes in, and we can crack those to draw cards. Gust of Wind is next. This is 3 and a blue for a sorcery that costs 2 less to cast if we control a creature with flying, and it says return target non-land permanent we don't control to its owner's hand and draw a card. So this is sort of the reverse of Into the Royal. Into the Royal is 2 mana to bounce something, 4 mana to bounce something and draw. This is always bounce something and draw, but it can only be something we don't control. And it's always 4 mana unless we control a flyer. If we control a flyer, it's 2 mana to bounce something we don't control and draw a card. So you can see the parallels with Into the Royal, but yeah, this is definitely more of a removal effect, but it does draw us a card as well. Next up, Herbie enters and draws us a card and lets us put a land on the battlefield tapped from our hand if we have one. Next we have Mu Yanling Wind Rider. This is 2 and double blue for a 2/4 legendary human wizard pilot that says when she enters, we make a 3/2 colorless vehicle artifact creature token with crew 1. If you've never seen vehicles before, they are artifacts that have the ability crew for a certain number. If at any time, at instant speed, we tap any number of creatures with a power of at least the crew number. So for Mu, for Mu's vehicle that is, it's any creature power 1 or greater. Then until the end of that turn, that vehicle becomes an artifact creature. So this is just an artifact token sitting around, but if we crew it, it becomes a 3/2 artifact creature until end of turn. Pretty nice. And Mu gives all of our vehicles flying. Now, I don't think we have any other vehicles in this deck. So essentially, Mu exists for us to either tap her or tap something else to crew the vehicle token she makes, and we've got suddenly a 3/2 flyer. But that's not why she's in this deck. She's in this deck because whenever one or more creatures we control with flying deal combat damage to a player, we draw a card. This is great for us. It does say 1 or more creatures. So if we have 3 creatures do damage to opponent A, then we're only going to draw 1 card because that's 1 or more creatures and it's drawing a card. But it also says a player. So if we have 1 creature do damage to 1 opponent and another creature deal damage to another opponent because we've attacked multiple opponents in the same turn, each one of those creatures doing that combat damage is going to trigger this ability because it's all 1 or more creatures to a player, and then another player, and another player. So yeah, we can draw multiple cards in a turn with Mu's ability, as long as we have multiple flyers doing combat damage to multiple players. And it's just nice that Mu gives us something that we can crew and have as a flyer if we need to be able to trigger her ability with that. So yeah. Next up, we have not seen Reconnaissance Mission yet. This is 2 and double blue for an enchantment that says whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. This is just straight up Coastal Piracy. It's a great effect, same cost, makes all of our creatures have curiosity, draw us a card when they do combat damage. But Reconnaissance Mission is better than Coastal Piracy because if we don't want this, we can just cycle it for 2. We pay 2, discard it from our hand, draw a card. We can turn this into a 2-mana draw spell essentially, or we can play it for 4, and all of our creatures are going to draw us cards. Obviously, this is better, but sometimes you don't have 4 mana to spare. So yeah, good options. We've seen Tide Skimmer. It draws us a card when we attack with at least 2 creatures that fly. Vulture draws us a card whenever one or more creatures we control with flying deal combat damage to a player. And remember the thing I said about Moo and us having flyers do combat damage to a player, and it's 1 or more creatures? I can say that about Vulture too. It's 1 or more creatures with flying doing combat damage to a player. When we do that, all of those creatures get a counter and we draw 1 card. But what if we do a flyer at each of our 3 opponents and they all do combat damage? We're going to get this triggered 3 times. We're going to put a counter on each of the creatures that did that damage. So that's 1 creature per, or 1 counter per creature, but not triple times. And then 3 cards. So yeah, that's pretty neat. It's always going to be 1 counter per creature, no matter what. But if we spread out the damage to different players, we can draw multiple cards from the overall from that combat phase. Yeah. Defiler of Dreams draws us a card when we cast any blue permanent spell. Emeritus of Ideation has Ancestral Recall stapled to it, so that's pretty powerful. Mole Drifter, we can, when it enters, whether or not we evoke it, it draws us 2 cards. Overlord of the Flood Pits enters or attacks, and we draw 2 and discard 1. Meringue River Regent lets us cast its Coil and Catch instant Omen to draw 3 and discard a card. And Windreader Sphinx lets us draw a card every time any creature on the battlefield with flying attacks. Amazing. But we also have Season of Weaving. This is a cool modal spell from Bloomburrow. The way this works is for 4 and double blue, we get a sorcery that gives us 5 paw prints worth of modes. This is not like a real resource that we hold on to. We just spend it to buy effects, essentially. And we can choose the same mode more than once. So 1 paw print is draw a card. Awesome. We could just make this 6 mana draw 5 if we want, if we just choose this ability 5 times. The second one is choose an artifact or creature you control and make a token that's a copy of it. Again, similar to what I was saying about the Mockingbird, if we copy something that is legendary, we will have to put one of those permanents in the battlefield, into the graveyard, due to the legend rule. So if we copy our commander with this, we're making a copy of the Lord of the Eagles, which is a legendary creature, and that copy is also called the Lord of the Eagles, which is a legendary creature. So we can't have 2 legends in play at the same time that share a name. However, we can copy any creature or artifact that we control that's not legendary, and we get to keep it. So that's pretty neat. And that's 2 paw prints, so we could do that twice and then just draw a card as well. And for 3 paw prints, we can return each non-land, non-token permanent to its owner's hand. This is sort of a board wipe effect. Everything that's not a land or a token goes back to its owner's hand. That's creatures, enchantments, artifacts, planeswalkers. As long as they aren't tokens or lands, they're going back into their owner's hands. Now that includes all of our non-token, non-land permanents as well. But what's cool about this is we can do this. Here's a fun trick. We can choose the 2 paw print mode and the 3 paw print mode, because remember, we get 5. We can make a copy of one of our creatures, and then all of our non-land, non-token permanents, as well as everyone else's, go back to their owner's hands. But that token copy we made is a token, so it stays in play, right? So we get to keep our creature that we made a copy of. Let's say it's a creature. And in fact, let's say it's our commander. Now, I just got done saying if we make a copy of our commander, one of those is going to have to go to the graveyard, either our commander or the token. If the token goes, it disappears forever because tokens don't exist off the battlefield. If it's our commander, it will go to the graveyard, and we can then put it in our command zone if we want to recast it, which maybe we do. However, putting the legend rule itself, which causes us to put all but 1 copy of a legendary permanent that shares a name into the graveyard as a state-based action, well, like I say, it's a state-based action. It's something that happens whenever someone would get a chance to do a thing, which is called receiving priority. No one ever receives priority in the middle of an effect resolving, or a spell resolving. So if we were to choose the 2 mana, or the 2 paw print, and the 3 paw print modes of Season of Weaving, we could target our commander with this. And when it resolves, we will make a copy of our commander that is a token, and then we will bounce every non-land, non-token permanent on the battlefield to its owner's hand, including our original commander. But the token copy of our commander stays in play. And because we don't check the legend rule in the middle of the resolution of both of these abilities, that means after it's done resolving, the legend rule does check. And then it sees that we only have one copy of a legendary creature named the Lord of the Eagles. It's that token copy we made. The original's in our hand. So we don't lose it because the legend rule is not checking in the middle of Season of Weaving resolving. So this is a cool way for us to, if we want to go through all this, it's a cool way for us to say, oh, well, we want to essentially do a board wipe and bounce everything that's not a token or a land, but we don't want to lose our commander. So we make a copy of our commander, put the original in our hand, and we still have that 8/8 creature. Now, it's just entered, so it has Summoning Sickness. It can't attack right away, but we can, next turn, attack with it, and it's not doing commander damage because only our commander card, the actual physical card, is our commander, and so even if something else has the same name as our commander, the damage it does is combat damage, but not commander damage. So we're not winning with commander damage using that token copy, but we still have an 8/8 flyer that we can do a lot with, and if we want to start doing commander damage again, we just play our commander again. It will cause that copy to die. I assume we don't want to play our commander just to lose it, but these are just the options we have. Or remember, we can do all of this and just not make a copy of something legendary. We can bounce every non-land, non-token permanent to its owner's hand and draw 2 cards if we want, and just ignore the middle mode. So lots of cool modes on Season of Weaving. This can do an awful lot for us. So yeah, pretty cool. And that covers our card advantage section. Next up is our acceleration section, which as usual I've just tagged as ramp. We're of course running Soul Ring. This is a single generic mana for an artifact that taps for 2 colorless. Very powerful. It's the symbol of the format, so put it in your deck. Next is Wayfarer's Bauble, which right now, I hate that this is the case, but I'm recording this video before the official release. It's technically pre-release day for the Hobbit, so don't have a price for this yet. But normally, I'm factoring at about 30 cents USD for a Wayfarer's Bauble, at least the Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate printing. So this is probably going to be about the same for that. I just wanted to choose the art for this that was, Hobbit related. So yeah, forgive that this pricing is slightly lower than it should be because Moxfield's not showing us the price for this yet because it's not out yet. Or it's not official yet, I suppose. Yeah, but I imagine a bunch of our prices are going to go down as well because all of our basic lands are Hobbit basics and they're currently above the minimum price because they're brand new, I guess. So yeah, anyway, Wayfarer's Bauble. It is a single mana for an artifact that if we pay 2, tap it, and sack it, we get to search our library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle, which is Rampant Growth. A great effect. Being able to use Wayfarer's Bauble in a deck that's not green, which is the Rampant Growth color, is excellent. It finds us one of our basic islands, puts it into play tapped, we can untap with it next turn and start using it. If we have this in our opening hand, we play an untapped land, play this, next turn, play another untapped land, crack this, and we've got 3 lands in play at the end of turn 2. We've got a little bit of acceleration. Rampant Growth is just, it's a staple for a reason, and I don't know. I feel like people are like, oh, if you're not running Incredible Ramp, it's not worth ramping. No, Rampant Growth still does work, and Wayfarer's Bauble lets any color do it. So yeah, put it in your deck. Similarly is Arcane Signet. This is an untapped 2-mana rock. So 2 mana for an artifact that taps for 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity, which in this deck is just blue. But it's an untapped mana source for just 2 mana. That's very strong. We should use that. We would use this if it was a tapped mana source. Because we are. It's called Sky Diamond. This is a 2 mana artifact that comes in tapped and taps for blue. This is worse than our Arcane Signet, but still worth running in our deck. So yeah, might as well. Another blue source is great for us. We've also got Cloud of Fairies, which we can play, and it will enter an untapped 2 lands. So it's a rebate, but it's still kind of a ramp. Emrakul's Messenger lets us, when we draw our second card each turn, make an Eldrazi spawn, which we can sacrifice to add colorless mana. That's a good way to build up our mana base. Malcolm lets us play something eventually for free when Malcolm does combat damage to a player, which is pretty sweet and technically counts as ramp. Ornithopter of Paradise can tap for 1 mana of any color. Herbie enters, draws us a card, and lets us put a land from our hand onto the battlefield tapped. So if we have one, that's acceleration. And Peregrine Drake, of course, just like our Cloud of Fairies, untaps 5 lands when it comes in. Very good. The last thing is Heraldic Banner. This is a manalith, kind of. This is a 3 mana artifact that as it enters we choose a color, and of course this deck we will choose blue, and it gives all of the creatures we control of that color +1/+0, which means all of our non-artifact, non-Emrakul's Messenger flyers. So yeah, this is, and actually, do we have any blue artifact? Anyway, we've got a lot of flyers and a lot of blue creatures. So giving them all a power boost, that means that that's 1 bit of discount for our commander for all of the ones that are flyers that are getting that. And Heraldic Banner taps for 1 mana of the chosen color. So for 3 mana, we get a source for blue mana that comes in untapped, and all of our blue creatures get +1/+0. Awesome. That is our acceleration section. And as I mentioned, we have a bunch of discount effects. We've got a lot more than I normally run in my decks. But they just go with the theme of our commander, and overall they work pretty well for us. I'm going to give you the math on them. So Highspire Bellringer makes our second spell each turn cost 1 less to cast. Because of that, we're likely to be able to cast a second spell each turn, and since we're drawing so many cards in this deck, this is a great way to get ahead. It just works well for us. Warden of Evil's Isle makes all of our creature spells with flying cost 1 less to cast. We have 41 flyers in this deck, including the Warden itself. So it should be discounting 40 of our cards, including our commander, but it won't, because it only discounts things by the generic mana cost. And we have a number of flyers that don't have generic mana costs. Our Tempest Gen is triple blue. We have several flyers that are just a single blue. So there's that. However, these discounts do mean we can cast things for free sometimes, like Ornithopter of Paradise. It costs 2 generic mana. Well, if we have Warden of Evil's Isle, or rather, if we have Highspire Bellringer in play, and we cast the Warden is going to give our Ornithopter a discount of 1 because it's a flyer. The Highspire Bellringer is going to give our Ornithopter a discount of 1 because it will be the second spell we cast that turn. And since it only has generic mana in its cost, and it's being discounted by 1 and 1, its 2 mana cost becomes 0, and we can cast it for free. Pretty neat. We've talked about the Defiler of Dreams. It lets us pay life rather than a single blue pip for any blue permanent spell we cast, which is a discount. It is us still paying for it, but it's discounting the mana of it because it's substituting it with a payment of 2 life for a single pip, which is still pretty great for us. And we talked about Thryx. Thryx there's 13 other cards in this deck that can be discounted by Thryx, including our commander, because that's the spells we cast with mana value 5 or less, or mana value 5 or greater, rather. We are also running Sapphire Medallion. I really don't like to run the medallions just because they are powerful, but they're sort of a power level that our deck is not really looking for. But for this one, it's great. It's 2 generic mana for an artifact that just makes all of our blue spells cost 1 less to cast. You know, it's, in a way, we could be running a 2 mana rock, a mana rock like Arcane Signet or Sky Diamond, and this is doing something similar unless we're casting multiple spells per turn, which in this deck we very likely are. So this giving us, if this were like a mana rock, it would only be producing 1 mana a turn. If we're casting multiple blue spells in a turn, this is discounting each of them with a generic mana cost, or a component to their cost, by 1. So for each spell we're casting, it's like it's producing more mana for us during that turn. So it can really be helpful to us. We have a total of 52 blue spells in this deck, including our commander. So yeah, this is a pretty nice discount for that. And the last one in here is Kefnet's Monument. I love the monuments from Amonkhet. I'm always excited when I can run them. 3 generic mana gives us a legendary artifact that makes all of our blue creature spells cost 1 generic less to cast. We have 39 blue creature spells in this deck. Again, that does not include our Emrakul's Messenger because that has Devoid, so it would not get a discount since it is not blue. But all of our other 39 creatures that are blue get this discount. And whenever we cast a creature spell, note here, it does not say a blue creature spell in this second ability. Any creature, including our colorless ones, whenever we cast any creature spell, target creature an opponent controls doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. Now that does not tap the creature, but if the creature was already tapped, it's not going to untap during its next untap step. That's pretty good. In addition, this is like a stun counter, but it isn't a stun counter. So if we were to do this and target the same creature multiple times, it's not going to accumulate and say, we target it 3 times with this ability. That does not mean it will not untap for the next 3 turns. It's just during its controller's next untap step. So it encourages us to spread this around multiple creatures that are already tapped. So this is a pretty nice effect, the discount effect and the doesn't untap effect. But just note, it does have some limitations, and they're still pretty fun to play with. That is our discounts section. It's time now to go to our interaction section, which, that's not our interaction section. This is, as usual, I've just tagged this as removal. We've got rapid hybridization to start us off. A single blue for an instant that destroys a target creature. It means it cannot be regenerated. If it had the regeneration ability, they can't use it. And that creature's controller creates a 3/3 green frog lizard creature token. So we're essentially saying, you lose your creature, but you get a 3/3 vanilla creature instead. You get a frog lizard. Seems neat. It's a good way at instant speed to remove something, so yeah, we're good for that. We've seen Into the Roil. It will bounce a non-land permanent to its owner's hand. That's what we want from it. Reality Shift is 1 and a blue for an instant that exiles a creature, and its controller manifests the top card of their library. To manifest a card, what they do is they take the top card of their library and put it on the battlefield face down, and it is a vanilla 2/2 creature that doesn't even have a name. But they get to look at it, at whatever that card is, and if that card is a creature card, they can pay its mana cost at any time that they have priority, even without using the stack, to flip it face up. And it stops being a 2/2, it's just whatever card that was. However, if that card is not a creature card, it will simply be a 2/2 vanilla creature that's a face down card as long as it remains on the battlefield. If it was a land, it's a 2/2 creature. If it was an instant, or a sorcery, or an enchantment, it's just a 2/2 creature. Once it goes to the graveyard, it will be face up, or if they were to somehow exile it, or even exile it and have it return, maybe they'd be able to have use of it, but yeah. It's just a 2/2 creature. They only get to flip it face up if it is a creature card. Next we have Stolen by the Fae. X and double blue for a sorcery that bounces a creature with mana value X to its owner's hand. It has to be exactly X. And we then make that many 1/1 blue fairy creature tokens with flying. So this gives us a bunch of tokens. It bounces something. Hopefully it's something big. We do have to pay 2 more than the mana value of that creature, but then we get the mana value of that creature in fairies. So that's pretty sweet. Because that mana value is the amount of discount we get from those fairies for our commander. We've seen the Wondrous Wasp. It will tap down a creature, and that creature loses its abilities as long as the Wasp is in play. Brazen Borrower has the Petty Theft instant adventure that bounces a non-land permanent opponent controls. Imprisoned in the Moon is next. This is 2 and a blue for an aura that enchants a creature, land, or planeswalker, and it turns that permanent into a colorless land that has tap to add a colorless mana, and it causes the permanent to lose all other card types and abilities. So what we do with this is, if someone is playing, I don't know, Galta, if we target Galta with Imprisoned in the Moon and it resolves, Galta will no longer be a creature. Galta will be a land that taps for colorless mana, will lose all other card types and abilities, and because it's losing the creature card type, it no longer has a power and toughness, it loses all of its other abilities. So yeah, that's how we shut down Galta. Galta is now just a land. We've sort of ramped our opponent a little bit by giving them access to another land. That seems okay. But if they don't have a way to interact with their own lands, or to interact with this aura, that creature is going to stay that way, or that planeswalker is going to stay a land for as long as it's on the battlefield. Which is to say, Imprisoned in the Moon is a great way to deal with problematic commanders. Because commanders can go back to the command zone when they change zones. But Imprisoned in the Moon doesn't change that creature's zone, it just changes its types and removes its abilities. So if you're up against someone who's playing a value commander, or someone with something with a lot of abilities, or just helping them out a lot, if they don't have a way to stop Imprisoned in the Moon from resolving, and then they don't have a way to interact with their own lands or with an enchantment, then you've shut their commander down for quite a while, unless they can make a deal with someone else or with you to get rid of Imprisoned in the Moon and thereby free their commander again. So yeah, pretty neat. We've seen Kefnit's Monument. It's very, very light interaction because it doesn't tap down creatures. It does cause them not to untap during their next untap step, which is, less nice than if it tapped them down, but still it's pretty good. Gust of Wind bounces an on-land permanent we don't control to its owner's hand and lets us draw a card. Dream Eater bounces a non-land permanent that an opponent controls to its owner's hand when it enters, and Morong River Regent, when the dragon itself enters, we return up to 2 target non-land permanents to their owner's hands. It doesn't have to be something an opponent controls, but it can be. And that is our interaction section. We are running 2 different Wrath effects. These are cards, I should say, that can clear the board at least in some way. We've seen Season of Weaving. Its third ability lets us bounce every non-land, non-token permanent to its owner's hand. And then we have Fairy Slumber Party. This is 4 and double blue for a sorcery that bounces all creatures to their owner's hands. Doesn't matter if they're tokens, if they're non-tokens, whatever it may be, all creatures go back to their owner's hands. And for each opponent who controlled a creature returned this way, we make 2 1/1 blue fairy creature tokens with flying that cannot block non-flyers. They can only block creatures with flying. So these are really here just to be attackers for us and to be discounters for our commander, because if every player in play, and we have 3 opponents, let's say, has any creatures in play, we cast Fairy Slumber Party and we get 8 fairies, because that's any number of creatures for 4 different opponents, 2 fairies it's 2 fairies per player who has creatures returned this way, and we are one of those 4 players. So that's 8 fairies, which means if we've got 2 extra blue lying around, we can immediately recast our commander, because our commander is getting a discount of 8, since we've got 8 1/1 fairies on our side of the board. And we don't have to do that right away. We can do that on our opponent's turn, since our commander has flash. Pretty neat. And that covers all the support sections of our deck. We're going to go over the supplemental categories now. Don't have that many in this deck. We're just going to go to our payoffs first. These are all cards that reward us for what we were going to do anyway. We've seen all of these already. Winged Words and Gust of Wind both have a discount to themselves if we control a creature with flying. Moo lets us it technically gives all of our vehicles flying, so that's kind of a payoff there. Tide Skimmer draws us a card when we attack with 2 or more flyers. Vulture draws us a card when we do combat damage with flyers. Shadow Puppeteers makes all of our flyers bigger. And Wind Reader Sphinx lets us draw cards when any flyers attack. So yeah, that's our payoff section. Next, let's talk about our pump. These are all cards that will pump up our creatures and make them bigger. We've seen all but one of them. Heraldic Banner pumps up all of our blue creatures by 1. Sprite Noble we can tap to give all of our other creatures with flying +1/+0. Vulture can put counters on our creatures our flying creatures when they do combat damage to a player. Windstorm Drake pumps up all of our flying creatures by +1/+0, and Shadow Puppeteers lets any of our creatures with flying that attack become base power and toughness 4/4 until end of turn, which doesn't pump everything, but it pumps quite a few things. We haven't seen Favorable Winds, which is the simplest one of all. It's 1 and a blue for an enchantment that gives all of our flyers +1/+1 all the time. Sure, it's another flyers card that just feels obligatory to include, and it's not bad, so we might as well. That is our pump section. Next, we have our protection section. These are all cards that we can use to protect ourselves, not including things like Into the Royal, which lets us bounce something at instant speed, and it could be one of our things, so we protect our commander from going back to the command zone by putting it in our hand, because generally in this deck, if it's not a board wipe, we can replay our commander for minimum cost anyway, since the total power of our creatures discounts our commander, including the commander tax. But Siren Storm Tamer can be sacrificed to counter a spell or ability that targets us or one of our creatures. Plume Creed Escort can, at flash speed, give one of our creatures hexproof until end of turn. Kira gives all of our creatures the ability that counters the first spell or ability that targets them each turn. And Thrix makes all of our mana value 5 or greater spells uncounterable, which is a nice protection from counter spells, especially for our commander. Yeah, that's our protection section. And our last section of our spells is our token section. I just want to go through all the different ways that we have to make tokens in this deck, and we've seen all but one of them. Emrakul's Messenger, on our second card draw, makes us an Eldrazi spawn we can crack 4 mana. Mischievous Mystic, on our second draw, makes us a 1/1 flying fairy. Stolen by the Fae makes more of those 1/1 fairies when we bounce a creature. Thopter Fabricator makes us a 1/1 flying Thopter when we draw our second card. Wingblade Disciple, when we cast our second spell, makes us a 1/1 flying bird. Ethereal Investigator makes us a 1/1 flying spirit when we draw our second card. Moo makes us a token vehicle, that's a 3/2 that crews for 1. Fairy Slumber Party makes us a bunch of 1/1 flying fairies that can't block creatures that don't fly. Season of Weaving can make us an artifact or creature copy, or can make a token copy of an artifact or creature if we choose the 2-paw mode, and we can do that twice when we cast it. Shadow Puppeteers makes 2 1/1 flying Black Fairy Rogue creature tokens, and Feywild Visitor is a background enchantment, which is an enchantment that gives an ability to our commander. For 2 and a blue, this legendary enchantment background gives our commander the ability that says whenever one or more non-token creatures we control deal combat damage to a player, so again, it's any number of creatures but per player, we make a 1/1 blue fairy dragon creature token with flying. So we get even more 1/1 flyers just by having our things attack and do combat damage, and it's baked into our commander. So if this is in play and our commander is not, it won't trigger, because the ability is on our commander to have that happen when our creatures do damage. Yeah, so that's how that works. And that covers every one of the spells in our deck. As usual, we're going to go over our land base now, starting with our basics. We're running 27 islands. In a monocolor deck, you end up running a lot of basics, and it's worth it to us. Like I was mentioning, this is normally a minimum value on mana pool is 15 cents. The fact that this is 6 cents over right now is crazy to me, because it's a set that's in standard and it's a basic land, but it will drop by, probably 6 cents. So yeah, this price will go down if that's relevant to you. We're running 4 fixing lands. One of them is, there's no command tower, because command tower would be an untapped source of just blue in this deck, and that's an island, so why run it? But we are running Path of Ancestry. This is a tap land that taps for 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity. So in this deck, it's just a tapped blue source. But when we use its mana to cast a creature spell that shares a creature type with our commander, we scry 1. So obviously when we use this thing's mana to cast the Lord of the Eagles, it shares creature types with itself, so we're going to get a scry off of that. We also have 4 other birds in this deck and 1 other noble in this deck. So Sprite Noble, I believe that's what it's called, yeah. So there are a couple of other cards in this deck that give us a scry when we use this mana. Otherwise, if we didn't have that much, it would be better to just probably run a basic, because an untapped source is better than a tapped source. But even with this being tapped, a little bit of scry is pretty nice for us, and it doesn't hurt us too much at all, especially with the curve we're running and the amount of discounts in our deck. We're doing just fine. We're also running Myriad Landscape. This is a tap land that taps for colorless mana, or we can pay to tap it and sacrifice it to search our library for up to 2 basic land cards that share a land type. So in this deck, 2 of our basic islands. Then we put them on the battlefield tapped and we shuffle. This is a good card. It does come in tapped. It does require us to pay mana into it and sacrifice it, and the islands it finds are going to come in tapped. But it is 1 land drop that eventually becomes 2 lands in play that make the color we want. So this is acceleration in our land base, albeit slow acceleration. So it's worth running to get ourselves closer to being able to have a lot of mana in play, not to be able to cast our huge commander. We won't need that much mana for our commander, but to cast all of our many spells, which will discount our commander. We're also running Temple of the False God. This is not most people's favorite card, but it is a solid one for a deck like ours that does have some creatures that are big and does want to do a lot of multi-spelling during our turns. This is an untapped land that taps for 2 colorless mana, like Soul Ring. This is a soul land, it's called. We just can't activate it at all unless we control at least 4 other lands, so it needs 5 or more, including itself. So even though this doesn't accelerate us early game, and if our opening hand is like Myriad Landscape and Temple of the False God and no other mana sources, we probably want to mulligan that. But if we do get this out as our 5th land, then we've just jumped from making 4 mana to making 6, and that's a pretty nice jump. In mid-game and late game, this still accelerates us, it still gives us mana that we can use, and that's pretty solid. So for the power level of deck we're running, this is a fine inclusion. It would also be okay if you wanted to just cut this and add another basic island. I think this is worth running, but yeah, you do you. We are last in this section running Muruganda Raceway. This is a weird one. This is a land that taps for colorless, and at max speed it taps for 2 colorless. What in the world is max speed? Well, this has an ability called Start Your Engines, vroom 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 vroom. It doesn't say vroom 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 vroom, but when I played at the Ether Drift pre-release, I did that every time, and I don't know, it got a laugh or 2. Anyway, what happens is, if you have no speed, which you won't have because this is the only Start Your Engines card of the deck, you get a speed that starts at 1. It doesn't mean anything other than it is your speed. And every turn, on your turn, if you have an opponent lose life, only once during your turn, when an opponent loses life, your speed will go up by 1. And once it goes up to 4, it's at maximum speed. So the idea here is, Murgonda Raceway comes in, our speed becomes 1. We attack that turn. If we do combat damage to a player, they're going to lose life, so it will go up to 2. And then we have to wait until our next turn, attack again, make it go up to 3. The turn after that, we make it go up to 4. And now Murgonda Raceway can tap for double colorless, which is a nice bit of acceleration for us as well in a deck that does have some expensive creatures. And of course, if we really need to hard cast our commander after a board wipe or something, and we're not getting a discount, this is a nice way to benefit that. In any case, this is an untapped source of colorless mana, which is fine in our deck, that eventually just gets better as we do the same things we were going to do anyway, which is attack with our flyers. Sounds good. The last section of our deck are these utility lands. We are running Agne Kala. This is from the Avatar The Last Airbender set. It is a land that comes in tapped unless we control a basic land. We've got plenty of basics in our deck, so pretty likely to have this come in untapped. When it's untapped, it taps for colorless, for a blue mana rather, and we can pay 2 and a blue and tap it to draw a card and then discard a card. Another one of these discard a card effects, which can be helpful for us with our Emeritus of Ideation, but at the very least, it's putting a card in our hand and then getting rid of the worst card in our hand, which could be the second card we draw during our turn, which means it would trigger any of our effects that care about us drawing our second card, like Emrakul's Messenger or Mischievous Mystic, making us a token. So a nice little way to get us some card selection to trigger some of our effects, and at the very least, it's a mana sink for us. If we don't have anything else to do with our mana, this is a nice little bonus for us. Next, we've got Castle Vantress. This is a land that enters tapped unless we control an island, and taps for blue mana, and we can pay 2 and double blue to scry 2 with tapping this as well. So another nice mana sink for us, a good way to take a look at what we've got on top of our library and control what's coming. So yeah, Castle Vantress, again, very likely to come in untapped as a blue source, and so it helps us out. Next, we've got Demolition Field. So as I like to say, the kind of decks that I build for this channel, especially this deck, are of a power level that is normally welcome at tables that aren't looking for an experience where their lands get blown up. And that's totally fine. Not everyone's looking for a land denial experience during Commander, even if it's not mass land destruction. However, sometimes an opponent is running a Rogue's Passage and making their huge Voltron commander unblockable, or they're running a Glacial Chasm or a Maze of Ith and making your big creatures unable to do damage to them. And sometimes your opponent's running something that's even more crazy that, maybe there's a power mismatch and you've got an opponent who's making an enormous amount of mana off of one land, like a Gaia's Cradle. In those situations, when someone is empowering their game plan in a significant way or disempowering your game plan, that land is a threat, and threats need to be answered in Magic. Demolition Field is my suggestion for that, even in pods where people don't want to have their mana get denied. Because Demolition Field is an untapped land that taps for colorless, or we can pay 2, tap and sack the Demolition Field to destroy a non-basic land that an opponent controls. Only a non-basic though. And then that land's controller gets to search their library for a basic land and put it on the battlefield untapped and shuffle. And we get to do the same. We are replacing the Demolition Field we sacrificed. They are replacing the non-basic land that we blew up. Both of us get basic lands into play, assuming we had basic left in our library, that come in untapped, so no one is down mana unless the thing we blew up was making a huge amount of mana, in which case, sure, they still get to keep a land, but not a Gaia's Cradle. So we normally don't use Demolition Field on, non-basic lands like a bounce land that just makes 2 mana, or, Temple of the False God, or something that has a wild growth on it. Because we're not trying to field at our opponent, we're trying to deal with problematic non-basics that can stop our game plan or really accelerate their own. So yeah, obviously you play how you want to play at the table, but you want to look at the vibe of your fellow players and follow that, especially in a deck like this. But even at those tables who are not looking to see lands get blown up, Demolition Field as a one-of card in, one-of answer for lands in a 100-card deck is usually pretty well accepted. And that's why it got reprinted in Foundations. So yeah. Next we have Rivendell, which is a legendary land, obviously from the Lord of the Rings set. This is a land that comes in tapped unless we control a legendary creature, which includes our commander. We can tap it for blue mana, or we can pay 1 and a blue and tap it to scry 2, but only if we control a legendary creature. So you can see that parallels between Rivendell and Castle Ventress. Castle Ventress requires us to spend twice as much to do that Scry 2. Rivendell requires us to have a legendary creature in order for us to do the Scry 2, but it only costs 2 mana in addition to tapping it. Ventress needs us to have an island. Rivendell needs us to have a legendary creature in order for them to come in and tap. You see, a little bit of redundancy there doesn't hurt us. Next, we're running Rogue's Passage. This is great in our deck, an untapped land that taps for colorless, or we can pay 4 and tap it, and target creature can't be blocked this turn. So there's 3 ways to use this effect. One of them is on our creatures. I mean, obviously, we use it on our commander. If we can do this 3 turns in a row, one of our opponents is going to die of commander damage, because we will have hit with our commander 3 times for 24, and you only need 21 to die. Now that's assuming our commander doesn't get killed and we don't get attacked in the process and killed, but it's a possibility. Using a Rogue's Passage doesn't just stop one of our creatures from being blocked, it stops one of our creatures from dying in combat due to combat damage. So if our creature can't be blocked, it can't take damage from blocking creatures. Obviously, it can still be removed with a removal spell, but this is protective and evasive for us. The second way we can use this is politically. We can say, it doesn't say target creature you control can't be blocked. So we can say to opponent A, hey, I see you've got a big creature and you want to attack opponent B, but you're afraid of being blocked. I will use my Rogue's Passage to make your big creature unblockable if you attack them this turn. And in exchange, as we make a deal with this, maybe you leave me alone for a turn cycle or 2. And that opponent might say, that sounds like a pretty good deal to me. I've been wanting to attack them. Go ahead and activate your Rogue's Passage. And we will say, no, 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 no. If we had activated Rogue's Passage before you attack, you could choose to attack us with that creature and we wouldn't be able to block it. You've got to attack with that creature first, and we will use Rogue's Passage before blockers are declared. And they'll say, okay, that's fair. We're making an equitable deal. I will declare an attack with my big creature. And we will say, great, we're honorable because we're playing the Lord of the Eagles, you know? It's a good character. So we're going to activate our Rogue's Passage before blockers. And now their creature is unblockable. And they're doing damage to opponent B, who's like, what the heck? What's this collusion thing? But that's how the game's played. The reason this is great for us is not only because we've spared ourselves the ire of player A for a turn cycle or 2, since that's what we got out of it. We spent mana, but we didn't have to commit any of our creatures to combat. We didn't have to put anything forth to make this happen other than tapping some lands. Our opponent A, who made the deal with us, has tapped down their creature, which means they can't block with it this turn, whether it's against us or anyone else, assuming it didn't have vigilance, of course. They've committed that attack against opponent B, who now knows that even though we helped, opponent A is the one who attacked them, and opponent A has done damage to opponent B sort of on our behalf, because opponent B is our opponent too. We want them to lose, we want to beat them just as much, and letting opponent A reduce their life total for us, it feels like they're expending a lot more resources than we are with just our mana. And yet, they don't have that feeling. Opponent A feels like they got the better end of the deal because they got to do something they wanted to do anyway, and we helped them do it. Rather than our perspective, which is we got them to do something for us. So, I'm not saying this to be like manipulative, I'm saying strategically, in this political way, you want to make these kinds of deals that help advance your game plan. And you're advancing your game plan against opponent B by having opponent A hurt opponent B, and against opponent A, because opponent A's creatures tap down, they've agreed to some non-aggression with you for at least a turn or 2, and they've done something with their creature to help you. That helps you. So yeah, it's just a good idea. The third way to use Rogue's Passage is I call strategically. It's exactly the same as what I just said, but you don't make any deals. You wait until opponent A attacks opponent B, and then you say, oh yeah, before blockers, I'm going to activate my Rogue's Passage to make your big creature unblockable. Because most of the time, at a lot of tables, people see one opponent attacking another opponent, and they don't interfere. They just let 2 players, have it be between them. So by sticking our thumb in the pie, we're able to say, hey, I want to make your creature unblockable because it helps me to do so, and you're already committed to it. And both of those players, basically everyone at the table, is going to look up and be like, wait, what? You're getting involved in this? And we say, yeah, it helps us too. Sounds great. And then it's a moment people don't expect, so it's a little bit of a splashy, like memorable moment. So that's fun at the table. and it lets us use our resources, again, to help further our game plan without us having to commit to the board the same way that either of those players did. Rogue's Passage has a lot of fun to it, and everything I'm saying here is applicable to any kind of effect that gives sort of an unblockability to a creature or creatures. It's just, yeah, this is where it comes up in this deck, and it can be great with our 8/8 flying commander, even if we don't use it on our opponent's creatures. Next up, we've got Terrain Generator. This looks a little weird because it's an Edge of Eternity Stellar Sights printing, which I think is the best one. I just really like it. But it's a solid card either way. This is an untapped land that taps for colorless, or we can pay 2 and tap it, and then we have the ability to put a basic land card from our hand onto the battlefield tapped. We have to do it right away. When this says it, we don't have the ability to do it. It's not like it gives us an extra land drop during that turn. But if we've already got a basic in our hand, great, we can do this. Now I know you're thinking, why would we use this and put it into play tapped rather than our land drop? The reason is because we can do both. We make a land drop, then we activate Terrain Generator and get another land from our hand into play. It does come in tapped, and we did have to spend essentially 3 mana to do it, 2 mana to activate, and then the opportunity cost of tapping Terrain Generator for this rather than for mana. But what that means is we have so much card draw in this deck. So we're gonna likely have a couple of lands, or at least 1 land in hand every turn to make our land drops. And if we've got extra lands in hand and we don't need our mana to cast spells, we might as well pump it into Terrain Generator and get more mana into play that we can use next turn for ourselves on our spells. So yeah, this is a great way to get additional acceleration for us, and that's built into our land base and is an untapped land if we need it for mana. Finally, we're running War Room. Not a card I use all the time, but in a monocolor deck, it just makes sense. We can tap it for colorless mana, comes in untapped, or we can pay 3, tap it, and then pay an amount of life equal to the number of colors in our commander's color identity. So in this case, 1 life. And we draw a card. For 3 mana, tap, and pay a life to draw a card. If we're just hurting for cards, which in this deck we almost never are. So you could certainly cut this, but the cost of inclusion is quite low, and it's a card that works in a lot of different decks, so if you want to move it around later on, that's fine. But at the very least, like paying 3 and tapping this and paying 1 life to draw a card sometimes gets you the extra card you needed. Sometimes it gets you exactly where you need to go. And in a mono blue deck, where the philosophy is all around getting a lot of cards and being able to use them better and faster than your opponents, having 1 more source of card draw, it's not gilding the lily, it's the reason the lily has been planted in the first place. Love this War Room. And that sums it up. Again, I'm releasing new Hobbit Commander decks every Thursday until October when Reality Fracture drops, so let me know in the comments if you'd like to see a specific commander or style of deck. I'm happy to take your suggestions under advisement. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you want to support what I do here, make sure to like and subscribe. Ring the bell if you want to be notified when my videos go live. Consider supporting us by becoming a member of this channel on YouTube or joining my Patreon at patreon.com/secondmonitormagic. And remember, most of all, that magic is fun. You should play more Magic.